Hi, I'm Chris Ye, and I've given this exact same talk 4 or 5 years in a row, so if you've seen it before, you have my permission to leave now, although I do change the jokes every time. The reason that Chad always asks me to go last, one, it often takes me a long time to get here because I'm dropping off my kids and I'm kind of lazy, and the other is that he knows that I am super energetic when it comes to my presentation and that I throw in a lot of jokes along the way to try to wake you guys up. So that's what I'm here for today. I'm doing Go-to-Market for Geeks, how to fake it till you make it. Basically, once you've established that you have a huge-ass market, you then do have to establish some semblance of traction, or at least prove that you know how you're going to harvest that market, or as the young people say these days, how you might tap that ass. All right. We talked a little bit about business schooly stuff before. So there is this concept of go-to-market. You've heard it before. What the hell does it mean? Well, the business school people, and I actually do have a degree from Harvard Business School. I try not to mention that as much since 2008, but it does leak out. They talk about you got product, you got price, you got place, you got promotion. These are the 4 Ps. They love these sort of alliterative things. They're like the 7 S's, the 4 Ps. I think that's how they make all their money. The problem with this as a startup is that you don't know if you have the right product or not. You have no idea how much you should charge for it. You don't know where you're going to place it or if anyone's going to actually take it. And you have no money to promote it. Other than that, that framework works great. So you can tell how old this pitch is. When I did this original pitch, The Matrix Reloaded was actually still in theaters. Amazing but true. But what you have to do is you have to fight one battle at a time. You guys don't have a lot of resources. In some cases, you may even be a one-man or one-woman show, which means you just can't do everything at once. So the first and most important of the Ps is product. And I always tell people, you know, in the words of the great machine politicians, ship early and ship often. The great thing about this talk is that in the 4 years that I've been giving this talk, this has gotten tremendously easier because an entire industry has sprung up around it. So first of all, get it out in front of people, friends and family, early adopters, strangers on the streets, whomever you can line up and get to use something. All that feedback is going to be useful. The second thing is, if you're charging money, start charging money right away, whether it's eBay, Craigslist, PayPal, using some sort of subscription service. Just get some kind of proof that somebody will pay money for this. Now, the great thing about this is, 4 years ago when I started giving this talk, nobody had heard of Eric Ries, lean startups, minimum viable products, or anything like that. Since then, he's taken the world by storm. All you got to do is check out what Eric Ries has to say about that and follow that from a product standpoint. Price. Now, price is also important. I always say that pricing is necessary but not sufficient, i.e., you have to know how much you're going to charge people, and it can hurt your business, but it's rarely the thing that's going to help your business. So the rules that I count on for pricing, and a lot of people come to me and they say, well how do I price it? What are the rules I should follow? I tell them, first of all, price based on value, not cost. A lot of people, they have a spreadsheet, they say, hey, this is how much it costs, and this is how much I need to charge to break even or meet my targets. And I say, that's great. Your customers don't give a damn about your targets. Your customers don't give a damn about your costs. They're only going to pay the value that they think you deliver. So price based on the value, not based on the cost. Second, price based on how the market likes to buy. We see entire business models based around this. Now, if you think about it, you hear a lot about things like the Dollar Shave Club, where you can buy razors online every month. Well, razors have been around for well over 100 years. There are entire industries based around this, but these guys believe they can build a market around it. Why? Because they believe that they've come up with something, a method for buying the product that the market's going to like better than the current method. So the different methods that you have are generally purchase, license, or subscription. Purchase means that you're just buying the product outright. This is sort of the way traditional enterprise software is sold. There's a purchase price that's paid up front, and that's it. Licensing adds in the additional layer of maintenance or some sort of ongoing payment. So there's an upfront lump sum, and then there's an ongoing payment. And finally, there's subscription, where it's all amortized along the way. Subscription seems to be the thing that's really starting to dominate now. SaaS has really become one of the dominant forms of software. And you can see subscription commerce, especially in some of the companies that SoftTech has invested in, like Foodsy and whatnot, is becoming important. Finally, unit pricing versus flat rate. Some markets, people prefer to pay by the unit. They prefer to pay by the meter, others by flat rate. How many of you would like to pay for your phone on a per-minute basis? Probably not a lot of you, right? A few people. My wife, actually, we buy the prepaid cellular, not because we're poor or drug dealers, but because she doesn't like to talk on the phone. So it makes sense for her to have a prepaid cell phone. But for somebody like me who's talking all the time, hey, just give me all you can eat. So you got to figure out, with your market, do they prefer the unit pricing or do they prefer the flat rate? One principle to keep in mind, it's always easier to reduce prices than to raise it. Anybody who's already had a product out in the marketplace and realized, oh crap, I'm not charging enough, I'm going to go bankrupt, I have to raise my prices, can probably tell you horror stories about people yelling and screaming about prices being raised, bait and switch, you're a crook, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Listen, the internet lynch mob gears up when Facebook changes one tiny aspect of their interface. What the heck do you think they're going to do if you raise your prices? On the other hand, if you lower your prices, not a problem. And finally, for self-service products, always test. In the old days, it was eBay, Craigslist, AdWords. These days, it may be Facebook ads, LinkedIn ads to reach a specific demographic, going on Google+, tweeting stuff out. Doesn't matter. Test it out. Get the information. Place. This is a very important one for founders, especially technical founders, because many people are afraid to sell. In many cases, it's because their experiences with sales are with guys like this. I swear, this particular bit of stock photography is used in presentations everywhere. I've seen it at least 5 times in the past year myself. But it still reflects how we feel about sales. What do we think about salespeople? They're money motivated, they dress in funny ways, they're fast talking, they don't really know what they're talking about, and they're crooked and slimy and greedy as hell. And I'm not telling you that you should be crooked and slimy and greedy as hell. What I'm telling you is that's not what sales is about. Because fundamentally, as a founder, you can't avoid sales. A lot of people say, hey, maybe I can get channel to distribute it. I can get partners to help me out. I can get someone else to do the nasty, greasy work of selling. The problem is that the channel only sells what's already selling. And people who are doing affiliates and so on and so forth, they're not dumb. They're not saying to themselves, hey, how do I help this guy over here or this gal over there make their company successful? They're saying, what can I direct my traffic to that's going to make me the most money? These guys are optimized to within an inch of their lives. So unless you're already selling and doing well, nobody's going to pick you up. There's also what I call the underpants gnomes principle, also something that was brand new when I started giving this talk. For those who don't remember the underpants gnome principle, it comes from South Park. The gnomes were stealing underpants because they said, underpants, question mark, profit. So that's the underpants gnomes principles. People think, I need sales. The investors tell me I need traction. What do? Oh, let me hire some salesmen, right? Because salesmen produce sales. That's not correct. Salesmen are like underpants. There's a whole process that goes through. And what happens is that salesmen can't sell what's not selling and can't sell what they don't understand. And especially in a case when you're a founder, you're just starting out, the only kind of salesman you're going to be able to get is a desperate loser salesman, all right? If they were a good salesman, they wouldn't be desperate enough to work with you. Honest truth, honest truth. So as a result, what you've got to do instead is you've got to sell yourself. And that's a good thing because talking to customers is pretty much the most important thing you can do. Just sending a salesperson out to sell your product doesn't give you enough information. You send him out, he talks to 10 customers, they don't buy. What does that tell you besides maybe you should give up? And that's not really helpful. If you were doing the sale, if you were talking to those customers, you understand what objections they have. You see the look in their eyes as you're telling them about your product. And that customer contact is too valuable to abdicate. So what I always tell founders is they've got to be the tip of the spear. They've got to go out there to the customers and sell. If you're a consumer company, it's not the same thing because you're not selling each individual version of your app to each individual person with an iPhone, but you still got to go out there and meet the customers and talk to them. You've got to understand these 3 questions. And I think Steph covered these very well. What is the problem you are trying to solve? If you cannot articulate this in the length of an elevator ride, get a new problem or get a new startup. What are you doing about it right now? I totally agree. In terms of competition, don't worry about the competition because you know what? The biggest competition is doing nothing. Right? Doing nothing is easy. You don't have to lift a finger to do nothing. And by far, people come to me all the time. I got this great idea. It's going to make people's lives easier. It's going to help them sell more. It's going to do all these things. I'm like, great. How do you beat doing nothing? Because doing nothing is always going to be the default answer. You're a new startup. Nobody knows you. You may not have backing. Why are they going to make their job harder and possibly get fired by their boss by doing something with you? Doing nothing is the most potent competitor you have. And finally, what would you like to happen? In an ideal world, it may be that the product you set up and started to build is not actually the product the customers need. Maybe as you get it out there and they start using it, they say, this is good, but I'd really like this. That's not a sign of, these are dumb customers, I should go find a different set. That's a sign of, hey, maybe I'm onto something. Demonstrate it and listen to their feedback instead of arguing. I have to tell you, I see this happen far too much. Customers go out, founders go out there, they try to sell to someone, and the person objects. Maybe the objection is stupid, but the founder then tries to say, no, 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 you're wrong. Oh. How many people out there have gone to a salesperson, had them say, brought up an objection, had the salesperson say, no, you're wrong, and then said, you know what? That guy's right. I'm going to buy from him. I find his honesty refreshing. Not true. Don't argue. Just say, oh, that's good feedback, that's good input, and see what you can learn from it. You're probably not going to get the sale, but arguing means you're definitely not going to get the sale. Finally, don't forget to ask for the order, all right? Ultimately, you have these meetings. Everything's going well. Everyone's feeling happy. They're like, oh, this is really cool. Guess what? Ask them for their money, because they will forget you 30 seconds after you walk out the door, because there's another 10 people lined up to see them. Get the order, get them to sign on the dotted line. And ultimately, if people say all sorts of nice things, but none of them ever give you an order, that's not validating your market. That's telling you that you're doing the wrong thing. There are 3 types of sales. So you have to understand that, classically speaking, whether you're consumer or enterprise, there are 3 ways that you sell things. The first way is through field sales, what we call a bagman. This is the classic salesperson who's going around and traveling to customers and actually doing demonstrations and selling to them. Maybe taking them out to golf, maybe they're taking them out to dinner, what have you. This is only supportable if you have a 6-figure selling price, because these deals take forever to close. It takes a 6-month sales cycle if you're lucky, which means that these people need to sell about $1 million a year, which means you need to be able to have a ton of marketing support and a ton of resources behind them. This is not easy, but if you have a very complex, very valuable product, it is generally the way you're going to do it. A great example of this is Jive Software down in Palo Alto. Right? They have software where it costs you $500,000 just to look at it, let alone install it. And they have an army of people who come on site and put it in place for you. Their CMO, who I knew, their former CMO, who was a great guy, did an event where he flew people to Aspen for a summit on user experience. All right? Their product has nothing to do with user experience. It was just an excuse to get them in a place where their people could talk to them. And guess what? If somebody called you up and offered you an all-expense-paid trip to Aspen with free lift tickets over the weekend for you and your family, would you go? The answer is yes. Would it make any sense for a startup to do that if your selling price was $1,000? Hell no. Telesales is sort of in between. So this is The Boiler Room, if you remember that movie with Giovanni Ribisi. So these are 4 or 5-figure deals with much smaller sales cycles. If you've ever been called on the phone by CDW, this is what's going on. Now this works. You can use WebEx demos or GoToMeeting demos or Join.me demos or what have you, time-based trials. And the whole idea is it's not, these are deals where the guy's betting his career on you. These are deals where people can just need to get someone to sign off on it. If it goes bad, they could bury it. It's not a big deal. And this will work, but it has to be in this range. It can't be much higher than that. It certainly can't get into the 6-figure range, because then it requires far more approvals and far more risk. And for that, people feel comfortable with meeting someone in person. Finally, there's direct marketing. Direct marketing, this could mean, just sort of classically speaking, AdWords, ads, SEO, SEM. It could also mean position in the various app marketplaces, whether it's the iPhone App Store, the Android Market, the Force.com marketplace. This direct marketing is a very low-touch approach in comparison to telesales and field sales, but that also means you can reach a much broader number of people and support a much lower price point. So ultimately, pricing and the type of sales you use work together very closely. You have to decide how much value you're creating. If you're creating a tremendous amount of value, it's very hard to do, you got to go with field sales. If you're creating a relatively smaller amount of value, but it's an easy decision for people to make, you should be going for direct marketing. And if it's in between, you end up with the boiler room. Promotion. So promotion, I used to say TechCrunch is not a strategy. It's hard to say that TechCrunch is still TechCrunch anymore. There's so many people out there. But the bottom line is hype is not a strategy. Hype is great, but it's insufficient. If you tell a VC, hey, we need the money for marketing, you're not going to get the money. The sole exception was 1999. We are not to that level yet. Even today, if you went and talked to Steph and said, I need $500,000 to spend on marketing, she would say, do you have a repeatable model? Have you proven that you can acquire customers that are worth $20 lifetime value for $3 of upfront cost? And if you can't do that, nobody's going to give you the money. Anytime you say, I need money for marketing, or I need money so I can quit my job, forget it. You might as well end the conversation right there. The only reason investors want to give you money is if they see a clear way for them to make more money out of it. You have to prove that model. And the exception being somebody who is a legendary entrepreneur, as Steph referred to, or somebody that you've worked with before, personal relationship, they may be willing to take a risk. I recently did an investment in a company called Gaston Labs. It was the founder of PBworks and his best friend, who was the former CTO of PBworks. I'd worked with them personally for a number of years. They said, we want to do something. We don't know what it's going to be. I'm like, okay, how much money do you need? Because the bottom line is these are two smart guys who I know are going to build something successful, but it's because I have a personal, many years long relationship with them. If somebody came to me out of the blue who I didn't know and said, Chris, I've got a great investment for you. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to figure something out, and trust me, it'll be great. I could not escape them fast enough. So promotion on a budget. There was an old way of doing this, which is to hire a PR firm. I think they're still around. Can anyone confirm this for me? I'm not entirely certain. But you had this whole process where you would brief analysts and brief the press and wire a press release. And it still works in certain parts of the world. I mean, there still are press releases. I swear, I see them sometimes on Yahoo Finance. But it was all about these relationships and unwritten rules. You had to pay a PR firm because they were the only ones who knew what the editorial calendar was, and they were the only ones who could get you in to see the editors. Now, the new way is really to do your own PR. You could friend, retweet prominent bloggers, Google Plus people, Scoble, his name always seems to come up for some reason, speak at conferences. There's a lot of ways to spread the word now. You don't need the traditional media, especially if you either have a niche product or a consumer product. Because when's the last time you learned about a new product by reading PC Magazine? Anyone? Okay, one guy. And I know you, Harrison. You're just trying to mess me up. No, but it's true. Everything is social nowadays. And as a result, what you want to do is you want to cozy up to the influencers, but it's still about relationships and unwritten rules. I mean, you hear it from all the investors. Hey, we want a referral from someone who we know. We want a referral from someone who we trust. When you get an app, it's because a friend of yours said, hey, I just got this cool new app. Let me show it to you. Everything's about these relationships and unwritten rules. The beauty of it is you don't have to pay a $15,000 a month toll to do this anymore. You can do it all yourself. So how do you do that? You turn your weakness into a strength. You use judo. Yes, you're a single-person shop. You have no money. Nobody knows you. Fantastic. That means you're unknown. That means whoever discovers you, assuming you go on to be enormously successful, gets to take the credit for you, right? And so you can use that. You can say, hey, I've got this new story. This is something that you should think about, because if you were the first one to get in on it, then boy, it'll make your name. I mean, think about it. From an investor standpoint, why do we know certain venture firms? Because of the companies they chose to bet on. Draper Fisher Jurvetson made its entire name off of one investment in the ancient days, which was Hotmail. One investment made the company's name. Same principle here. You're playing David and Goliath? Well, guess what? One of the things that big companies tend to be really crappy at is what I call retail politics. Right? When's the last time you called up a phone company, utility, somebody, and felt like, oh yeah, I'm talking to a real human being in the United States who's not reading from a script? My guess is never. So you don't have to be that. Now, unfortunately, you are answering the phone call at 2 a.m. when somebody has a problem with your product or your server has gone down. But you can put a human face on it. You don't have to say, we're experiencing technical difficulties right now. You can instead say, gosh, I'm sorry. I'm rebooting the server right now. I'm working hard to get it back in place for you because I know how important it is to you. You've got lots of ways to reinforce the friendly, accessible nature of your company. You've got blogs, Twitter, Facebook. You can respond when people comment about you. You don't have to be, you've got all sorts of ways to engage with your audience and with your customers. And you can do things that big company will never do. Because the bottom line is, people still get a charge out of hearing from the founder of the company. They still like to say, wow, the founder came to my blog and left a comment. The founder replied to my tweet. Take advantage of that. Because guess what? Jeff Bezos, well, a genius, has better things to do than that. Finally, you don't know what you're doing. That's a great thing. Because you can ask for advice and get people to buy in. There's an old adage when it comes to fundraising, which says, if you want money, ask for advice. If you want advice, ask for money. And it's true. Steph told you, she was saying, oh, the best pitch I heard, it wasn't a pitch. I got to know this guy, and then I found out what he was working on, and then I invested in the deal. Same holds true. You go to someone, I don't want your money. Of course I want your money. I don't want your money. But you're an expert in this field. You've done X, Y, and Z. I just want to have a conversation because you're one of the thought leaders in the field. Now, us investors and all these people in the investors, executives of companies, everyone's a raving egomaniac. Everyone loves to have their ego stroked. And the best part is you're absolutely sincere in doing this. You actually do want to learn something from them. Don't do it if you're not being sincere, right? If you think this guy's an idiot, but I'm going to ask him for his advice anyways, guess what? You're not going to follow his advice because it would drive your company off a cliff. So it's not going to help you with that guy in the end anyways. Only do if you're sincere. But take advantage of your ignorance. Ignorance can be power. So final thoughts. Don't strategize, iterate. What you do is going to change 50 million times between now and when you're successful, assuming you are successful. So spending a week doing 5-year plans or grand strategies is a massive waste of time. Even the investors know that it's bullshit. There is no magic formula. Every business is different. If there were a magic formula, believe me, I would not be standing up here. I would have a private island somewhere, and I'd be sitting on it, right? There is no magic formula, and even the investors don't have a magic formula. Sequoia, Accel, all these companies are constantly burying failed companies that they invested in. These are the most brilliant investors in the world, and even for them, the majority of their companies fail. Product alone is not enough, especially these days when it's so cheap and easy for people to build products. There's so many more products out there now. You've got to go out there and grab the ass by the hand, I guess. I'm not sure about that. You've got to go out there and go to the market and get that traction, because the thing that distinguishes you now is either a product that's just so phenomenal that it gets traction on your own, or the traction you've been able to drive through your passion and your work in the marketplace. Wow, this typo is still in there 4 years later. You can do more of this than you think. I really should fix that. You can do more of this than you think. Don't rely on advisors like me who can just give you some advice. We don't actually do anything for you. I mean, come on now, right? Don't rely on trying to find a salesperson. Don't rely on, just hoping that someone picks up your product. Go out there and do this yourself. But don't get too cocky, because ultimately the market is smarter than all of us. There's a great example of that recently. Andreessen Horowitz, brilliant venture firm, very successful, made a seed investment in Instagram. And then they turned around and made a much bigger double-down investment on a competitor, Pick Please. So they didn't do the Instagram deal. So while they made $78 million off of Instagram, they could have made $500 million off of Instagram. But they didn't. Why? It wasn't because they were dumb. These are some pretty damn smart guys. But the market is smarter than all of us. Stuff happens that we're just not aware of. And so the best thing to do is to get out there and listen to the market. So how you can reach me, I've got email, I've got blogs, I've got a Twitter account. Feel free to follow me. Hopefully I was able to keep you guys all awake, and I'll turn it over to questions and answers. All right, first question. See, back there, all the way in the back.
The pricing question.
Yes.
Drives me nuts. When I'm trying to establish traction, yes, getting users interested is great. Maybe I should float it out there for free and just try to get numbers. I know I want to charge. Maybe discounting early might be a good way. Maybe I tell them a discount, but I tell them what the price will be eventually. I've heard a million times, and I do believe that you can always reduce your prices. It's easier to reduce your prices, and yet this is one of the absolute biggest struggles. Can you elaborate on that part of your presentation?
Absolutely.
Because it's infuriating to me. It's one of the toughest things to me.
So the big question is, hey, I know it's bad to try to raise prices, but nobody knows who the hell I am. I got to give this stuff away for free. In fact, free isn't cheap enough. People are asking me for money to use my product. All right. So if you notice, the way people seem to do it these days is they say beta, right? So they slap the beta label on things. I don't think people even understand what beta means anymore. I think they think beta just means free for now, right? So that's what you end up doing. You do have to give it away to people. Ideally, you have a situation where you say, we're starting our open beta, which just means we're giving it away for free because no one wants it yet, and we need to build up some traction. So start with your open beta, give it away for free, but make sure that people are aware, hey, I'll grant, and you probably have to even grandfather some of those people in. But make sure, very clear from the start, this is going to be something that costs money. Follow-up question.
Yeah, it's a challenge a little bit. You said you wanted to establish the validation that people actually will pay a dime for this, and I agree with you. And you're not establishing that through an unpaid beta. I mean, I always love doing the paid betas. That says a lot. But then there's that catch-22.
So here's the nuance. So the question is, but wait a minute, you said to charge money so you could validate it. Why are you saying unpaid beta? So basically, I'm assuming you're going to the unpaid beta because you have failed miserably at charging money for it, right? Try to charge money first. At least make the attempt. Maybe you'll be surprised. If you got nothing else, then free is an option. It's sort of the last resort of the desperate in some ways, unless it's part of a freemium strategy. But you believe in your company. You got to try it. So try to charge money first, but a free beta is definitely a good fallback position. Okay, next. Back there.
If your platform gaining revenue from the advertising, what do you do as far as charging for that? And do you assume that you can charge more once you get more users and once your advertising gets more revenue?
So here's the question. What if my revenue model is based on advertising? And the trick with online advertising is that every number that you read in the press is a lie. A utter and complete lie. Because people are always saying, hey, we get this kind of CPM, we get this kind of effective revenue. Actually go in, see what their traffic is, see how much they actually make, and it'll show you every reported number is a lie. Advertising is a very difficult thing to make money with. So the only thing that people will tend to believe is the actual numbers. So let's say that you have traffic and you have 1 million page views a month, which is not a lot, but it represents some level of traction. Well, as an investor, what kind of value would I assign to that? I would say, well, if it's not incredibly targeted traffic, I'm guessing you could probably make about maybe $500 a month off of that. And so you start to say, well, at what point are investors going to get interested? Well, I probably need to get 10 million or 100 million page views a month. I mean, you need to get it. The only thing that people are going to believe is the actual traction itself. Now, people are willing to believe that if I have 100 million page views, you'll find a way to monetize it. But there's no way that I'll believe, hey, you're going to eventually, through your magical targeting, get a $50 CPM. It just doesn't work that way, unless you are selling to the world's most desirable demographic. Question back there.
On pricing a little bit, do you think the lifetime license or purchase of software for enterprise is dead as a model, and it's all going to be subscription software going forward with services?
If I were starting, I believe that there are two things involved. The question is traditional enterprise pricing with a perpetual license and maintenance dead in comparison to SaaS? I think for new entrants, it is dead, for the most part. And if you're a business application, if you're not SaaS, if you're not doing subscription licensing, you're probably barking up the wrong tree. Now, there is still going to be a ton of software that is bought on a licensed basis. Microsoft is still out there. As far as I know, they still have sales, right? They still have a market cap. But if you're a new entrant, it's hard to play that game. And SaaS is definitely the way to go unless you're doing sort of like an open source play. Okay, next. Back there.
What have you seen as some of the best ways to get customer feedback once you've thrown out that really terrible MVP?
Yes. So the question is, what's the best way to get customer feedback once you throw your MVP out there? My personal favorite is to actually go and visit them wherever they happen to be and watch them use the product. Because not only will you get a chance to see their product, you get a chance to see in what context is it being used. What are the other things they have around them? Are there other products that could technically do what your product does, but they're just not using for some odd reason? There's all sorts of information you can learn. If you don't have customers yet, You can also do a usability test. I'm a fan of just doing it yourself. You can hire someone to do a usability test for you, but then are you going to believe the results? You believe what you see with your own eyes. So just call upon your family and friends, say, I'll give you $20 to come in and use the product. Videotape it, observe what happens. As a side note, if you do want testing, usertesting.com is a great service. I happen to be an advisor and shareholder in the company, so I recommend you use it heavily. But do it yourself first. Next question. And I know we're short on time, so probably this is the last one. Last question.
What's the best question
The best question an entrepreneur can ask of themselves on a day-to-day basis is, what is the one thing that I can do today that will move the business forward? It is remarkable, all the things that you need to do as an entrepreneur. There's definitely not enough time in the day. And it's very easy to get caught up in things like responding to your email or dealing with customer complaints or this or that. There's all sorts of things that are going to be urgent. But Stephen Covey has this principle of things that are urgent and urgent and not important, important but not urgent. We often give short shift to the important but not urgent. You're a startup, oftentimes you're a sole founder or part of a small team. The only thing anything's going to happen is if you do it. So if there's something really important that needs to happen, just sort of thinking it needs to happen is not going to do it. Figure out what that most important thing is and do it. I'll give an example from, PBworks is a little more established, but one of the things that I wanted to do is I wanted to produce a free business product as a freemium entry into the marketplace. So I asked myself, well, what is the first thing that we need to do? We need to make sure that customers are going to be able to use this product. So I said, okay, I'm going to write a usability script today. Okay, I'm going to recruit usability testers today. Okay, I'm going to do a usability test today. Each day you just say what is on the critical path and advance it forward, because you're the only person who can advance it forward. Ultimately, the success or failure of your companies is up to you. That's both a wonderful thing and a terrifying thing. But if you believe in yourself, like I know you probably do, I think it's empowering. So find the thing that's going to move your company forward. Make sure you do that even if you have to drop some of these other things along the line. Angry customers, they tend to forget. Investors that you need to remind, hey, guess what? They'll be paying attention when your product is working. So focus on the thing that you think is going to make your company, move your company forward, and do it. All right, so that's fantastic. Thank you very much, everyone.